Okay, so I wanted to kind of address something that a lot of people have questions about, which is how to use the VRVP indicator. So you can just go to TradingView and type in /VRVP, visible range volume profile, and then you will get something that looks like this on your chart. Absolutely disgusting. And we're going to change the settings for that. I'm just going to delete this VRVP and show you my settings here in a second. Boom. So I've width set at 15, placement right, boom, boom, boom. I turned everything gray, right, with different shades of gray, but all gray. Inputs is at 1,000, and the value area volume is 95. And that's essentially it. So just pause it if necessary and then go over these settings. That's what I have, and then see how it's kind of used. So some people have on the point of control. So that's the highest volume, relative volume area on the VRVP indicator, and you can turn this on, etc., etc. And there's all these value area lows, value area highs, and that way you can kind of set up this automatic range. So what exactly is it used for? So essentially the way I use it is you can have all these things on. You can see they kind of have confluence with some of these major levels I've indicated here, with the red being the top of the range, quarter, three-quarter range, middle, quarter, bottom range. That's how I have it set up, color-coded. This is the DYDX chart. And then I'm going to quickly go over essentially what it's used for, what I use it for. Essentially what the VRVP indicates is how much volume is traded at that price level. So what you can tell by that is the most interested levels where traders are kind of struggling or have struggled or have had a lot of back and forth in volume of which direction the chart is going. So if you look at DYDX here, zoom out, this will load up perfectly, right? So it'll, depending on how zoomed in you are, it changes, right? So you can see it kind of adjusting here as I scroll in and out. So what it kind of indicates is, you can see here, so in this little area, this is the highest volume area traded. So this is where most price action or most volume has been traded at this level. So more or less here, you can see that this level, you can see a lot of price action kind of hovering there. So this is a great support area. Now I have it indicated by this blue line here, kind of being my support level. Then another level, a great level is here. I have it here indicated with the support level. Another level is up here. I have here kind of the support resistance level. We can drag that down a little bit, and we can drag this one down a little bit, more or less. And that's my range, right? So you can kind of start finding support and resistance level based on the VRVP levels. And this counts for every chart, right? So if you kind of go up to something like Caspa, you can see here now, of course, this is all traded very low. There's been low interaction in volume, right? So you can see there's such a void here. There's an insane void here. And that also indicates fair value gaps, right? So essentially these areas where if you go to 3-day or something, price action hasn't even really revisited this whole area here. And there's this massive void in volume traded. And that kind of shows what I call void, right? Or fair value gap, where price hasn't revisited this yet and kind of filled in this void. So I'll make a video on voids, etc., and the importance of fair value gaps later on. But for now, what's important is this VRVP being able to indicate that. So the first major crazy support levels, or crazy support levels, quote unquote, for Caspa would be right here. There's a little peak in VRVP that you could look at to see if we come down into it to long. And similarly here, and then this is like the craziest area, of course. All this, there's been crazy volume traded and time spent trading within this range. So that's another great level. And of course, within this, there's a bunch of levels. Caspa might not be the best chart since how parabolic it recently went. Let's see here. We'll zoom in and do SUI. So again, you can see that this is a peak VRVP level. So if we come down here, this is a great support area. Here is a lot of volume traded too. So we know that where we are right now is kind of a pivotal point. We're currently above it. If we can hold this, we can kind of climb up and run it up, so to speak. So this is kind of how you can look at VRVP and see different levels that are great to trade. That's essentially the primary use case for which I use it. Kind of looking at what the nice levels are. Blur is a great chart to see this, right? You can see that if I just indicate it with these lines, you have a nice level, which I would say is more or less, you could say something like this, right, is a decent level. Down here is definitely a decent level. And then where else would I would say here is kind of a nice, more as top of the range level. And you can see it kind of forms up these automatic equal ranges, right, with the middle of the range here, top, bottom. And yeah, so you can kind of start finding automatic ranges based on the VRVP with 1, 2, 3, and that kind of indicates range levels without you having to select levels by hand. Now, would I have selected these levels anyways if I were to create a range? I would say more or less bottom of the range myself without looking at VRVP. I would say top of the range up here, and then I would say middle of the range. I would put it here, right? And you can see that even without looking at VRVP, these will be confluent levels, right? And so it just creates confluence when selecting your price action support and resistance, and it creates this extra layer of why this is support or why this is resistance, because time spent based on volume traded at these levels is high, which means these are important levels to other traders or to traders historically kind of in this chart, right? So whatever chart you do this on, you're going to see similar important levels. Here we have rows. You can see here's a level, here's a level. This is the top of the range. And you can see this void all the way here. Oh, maybe not once we zoom out enough. But yeah, so this whole range area here is for the entire rows chart an insane support area. So this whole accumulation range is beautiful to accumulate within since it is such strong support. And then we can fill these less important levels. And of course, if you zoom in, you're going to have different time frames. You're going to have different levels. So if we go down to the hourly, the rows chart will look differently on a VRVP, but you can use it the same way. So you can kind of say like, okay, well, I would say here's an order block that I'd be interested in to find longs, confluence with this VWAP level. And if we come and revisit this down here, I might be interested in seeing what price action does and if it can maintain above these VRVP levels, which are support, which is in line with my order block. And also the middle of this and this range would be right about here, right? So you can kind of start seeing all this confluence build up based on this VRVP level. Now I'm going to get into that one other example of how I use VRVP now, which is on the higher time frames. I like looking at if we are above major important VRVP levels, right? So with rows, you can see this is the major level, and we are currently trading above that, which shows relative strength, right? So if we go to something like algo, I always use it as an example. You can kind of see if we look at major VRVP levels, now it has technically it's above the biggest level, but you can see a major level up here, and price is just still under that, right? So that for me is a way less interesting chart than say something like, I think DYDX is a good example of that, right? Where we are trading above these levels, let alone something that is insanely strong. We can look at a bunch of links, a bunch of different things. Like Chainlink is probably also above VRVP levels. There you go. See, so we're trading above this crazy level. And I kind of let alone a bunch of these other charts. There you go. Trade alerts going off. My apologies. And then so a bunch of these other charts like Ton, which is a relatively strong one. What else can we look at? So I can just keep giving examples, but so Ton not particularly actually. Now I just like this chart and this project, so I'm looking at what it can do. But a lot of these charts are showing relative strength above these levels that I deem good to be above, right? That if we are above VRVP levels, we are above where the majority of volume is traded historically, and that shows strength to me. And I would rather trade these charts than something where we're still below some major historical data levels where a lot of like traders have traded back and forth and conflict has been between traders and volume has been traded. So yeah, that is kind of, if you watch my video on how I set up my watch list, I talk a lot about VRVP as well. And I would just go back once you know, now you know how VRVP is used, and then see what I meant by how I selected these trades or how I select these charts. That's about it. So that's the VRVP, 2 ways that I use the VRVP, and how you can implement it today in your own trading strategy.